Hello, I'm Nico, and welcome to another topic analysis from Debate Clash. In this video, we'll be going over the resolution resolved. The United States should withdraw its military presence from Okinawa. We'll start by defining what the resolution is talking about, and then moving on to some of the major arguments you'll be seeing this next March. Now keep in mind that Debate Clash is for brainstorming purposes only. Please do not use it as a source in your rounds. The first part of the resolution, the United States, simply tells us that the United States is the only actor that's performing an action in the resolution. The action is should withdraw its military presence. I take this to mean that the United States will withdraw all of its military, its equipment, its personnel, anything with an American flag on it. But, in the spirit of forensics, every single word is debatable. The region they're considering leaving is Okinawa. Now, Okinawa is a small island, about 500 square miles large, located on the southern islands of Japan. I highly suggest pulling up a map of East Asia and seeing exactly where this island is located. Save or print this map so that you can refer to it in round and get a better image as to what arguments your opponents are making when they refer to specific countries performing actions within East Asia. It's also important to understand the history of Okinawa before going into your rounds. The simplistic genesis includes Japan allowing the United States to maintain military presence there for security and economic purposes. There are a lot of events that have happened over this island, so please go research it and grab some evidence to use in your round. Now, just like the United States moved into Japan in the 1940s, let's move into the affirmative arguments that you'll be seeing this next month. The first category for the affirmative are the benefits that the United States would receive if they withdrew from Okinawa. One of the primary reasons the United States might leave is to force Japan into increasing their own military. The negative will most likely be running arguments that say if the United States withdraws from Okinawa, East Asia will by default become less secure. If you can find fairly conclusive evidence that says that Japan will fill the United States' shoes once they leave, then you've got a great argument and there's no security decline at all. In fact, you could argue that if the United States withdrew from Okinawa, they would most likely increase troops to military bases nearby or simply relocate those troops. If the United States has the same military presence in East Asia, and Japan has an increased amount of presence, then overall that region is more secure. Another argument that you can make is that the United States withdrawing their military presence would actually increase US-Japanese relations. Since 1972, there have been thousands of crimes committed by US soldiers living on the island. The more crimes committed by the United States, the more the citizens of Okinawa want us to leave. It would benefit the United States to withdraw out of Okinawa before it destroys relations with Japan entirely. If you can prove that the US withdrawal of military presence would improve relations between the United States and Japan, then you've got a world of impacts at your disposal. The second category for the affirmative are the arguments why a withdrawal would be beneficial for both Japan and the Okinawa citizens. The first benefit is that crime would decrease. With US soldiers committing thousands of crimes, as previously mentioned, getting them out of Okinawa would only help the citizens that are living there. Along those lines, put yourself into their shoes for a moment. You have a massive military base in the middle of your city. It clogs up traffic, produces an immense amount of noise, and you're constantly worried that a helicopter might crash, causing danger to yourself or your family. It's not a pretty picture. Here's the problem though. If we are debating this topic in front of individuals that were from Okinawa, the affirmative would probably be winning almost every round. They most likely hate the military base that's there. So if you're running these type of arguments, make sure that you're getting a solid read on your judge. If they're not buying these type of arguments, don't keep going for them. Some also argue that US presence is destroying the economy and tourism on this island. In fact, one of the purposes of the United States maintaining a military base there was to allow Japan to focus on economic growth. Well, now that the United States is hindering that, we're kind of doing the opposite of what we set out to do. It's also important to note that the land that the United States military base is on currently used to be used for farming. It could be worth researching whether this land could be turned back into farming territory. Along these economic lines, it's also important for us to understand that growth is a key indication of a stable economy. If Okinawa can't grow because the United States has such a large military presence there, then that could be their Achilles heel for economics. There have also been accusations that the United States has been polluting the environment or hurting it in certain ways. I think we can objectively say that if the United States left Okinawa, it would be better for the Okinawan citizens. The first workaround at your disposal as the affirmative is that the resolution doesn't necessarily indicate a specific time frame for withdrawal. Troop withdrawals usually take time. Thousands of soldiers don't just magically teleport back to the United States. You can use this to your advantage in case your opponents decide to run arguments that say, well, China is about to attack Japan in the next month, and if we don't have troops there, we're doomed. Or Kim Jong-un is having a nervous breakdown, and he's gonna hit that big red nuke button the next week, and we won't have troops to stop it. You can explain that if the United States made the decision to withdraw, that it would probably be gradual, and likewise Japan might gradually increase troops as the United States filters out. Keep in mind that all of these arguments need to be warranted out. You need to let the judge know that we should debate about the real world of implementing actions instead of some crazy, hypothetical, unrealistic world where troops spontaneously evaporate. You could also argue that as the United States pulls out of Okinawa, they might also move into a more strategic location, somewhere where they can expand and get comfy, unlike Okinawa. This would allow you to solve for any security concerns that your opponents might have. If you didn't want to take that route, you could also make some great arguments that the United States' presence in Okinawa is actually destabilizing the region, that it puts other countries on edge. If the United States withdraws from that, it could actually calm the region down and force it to be an even more secure and safe place to be. Depending on the circuit you're in, this topic does open a lot of doors for framework arguments to be made. For the affirmative, you could argue that when evaluating the resolution, we need to look towards the initial purpose of why the US established a military base there in the first place. If that mission is accomplished, then we should withdraw. Or maybe we should focus on the long-term effects that this will have on Okinawa, rather than the narcissistic short-term goals that the United States has. I know I sound like a broken record, and I'm doing it on purpose, but if you're running these arguments, make sure to warrant them. The first category for the negative are the negative implications that a withdrawal would have on the United States. The first is that Okinawa is debatably the most strategic location in East Asia. It is within 1,000 miles of Seoul, Tokyo, Taipei, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. It doesn't seem so smart for the United States to just up and leave this prime territory. It could also be used to keep an eye on the oh-so-irrational North Korea, as well as the growing China and Russia. Now, it seems pretty absurd for the United States to leave just from the get-go, but then you take into account the fact that Japan is actually paying a large portion of the US's stay while it's on Okinawa. If someone was paying me to live in their mansion at the top of the hill, there is no way that they could get me out of there. Having a military presence in Okinawa also forces a lot of our actions to be multilateral. What the United States does in East Asia, we can easily get Japan involved in as well. There's also an abundance of other militaristic impacts that you can derive from the United States leaving the region. You might say that troop mobility is key to global security, or that the more military bases a nation has, the stronger hegemonic power they have. The negative truly has a lot of ground to get creative and generate hypothetical scenarios. Pull out that map of East Asia again and think to yourself, what could go wrong in that region? And would it be wise to have a couple thousand troops at your disposal? Negative argument. We know the United States loves to show off its military and have bases around the world. But the second category is going to go over the negative implications that a withdrawal would have for Japan. Something I learned on the playground as a kid was that if you're friends with the buff kid, nobody messes with you. If the United States leaves Okinawa, it's the same as your beefy friend moving away. You don't feel so comfy anymore, especially when you take into account that some of the kids on the playground are named Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. The United States spends way too much on its military. Japan would be wise to keep them as close as possible. If you look into the design of the base itself, it can also be used as a natural disaster relief tactic. A tsunami hits, the United States is there to help. It's also important to note that Japan does not have to invest as much militarily because the United States is there doing it for them. If the United States left, Japan would either have to accept the fact that their security standards are lower, or they'd have to start building up their military. Neither one is that grand for Japan. Even if Japan wasn't going to be attacked per se, they still look weaker and more vulnerable without the United States there. We should also understand that the United States is spending a lot of money in Okinawa. We have thousands of individuals that are living there, buying up food and other commodities. Imagine you're an aspiring artist on the beautiful island of Okinawa. You're making a living off of selling your paintings. You're barely getting by, but you're living your dream. Now half your customers leave because the United States withdrew, and you're not going to be able to survive on just creating paintings. This goes for any and all businesses that are on Okinawa. If the US leaves, so does the income of a lot of individuals. The US could also be serving as an aggression deterrent within the region. Once the United States leaves, the potential for aggression also increases. That's not good for the United States, it's not good for Japan, and it's not good for the world. The first negative workaround you can utilize is to force the affirmative into defending a withdrawal of all military presence. The resolution doesn't say some military presence, it's a blanket statement. That means the landing strip, the personnel, anything with a US flag on it is being withdrawn from the most strategic location in East Asia. If we were playing Risk, this would be a rookie mistake. Another way that you can make the affirmative's job harder is to run a framework argument that forces them to defend a present withdrawal. This doesn't happen in 1 year, it doesn't happen in 2 years, it's going to be happening right now. You can also argue that the affirmative shouldn't be able to simply relocate the troops to another location, that isn't an assumption that they can make. The resolution clearly says withdraw, not relocate. Make their life hard by forcing them into defending the decreased security that comes with the reduction of thousands of troops in East Asia while there are rising threats present. The first tip that I have for you is to be specific when possible. Don't stop your arguments at, there will be decreased security in East Asia. Go a little bit further and say North Korea is on the brink of attack. The United States withdraws, and they go in. The more specific you are, the better you'll do. The second tip that I have for you is to crystallize the meaning of the resolution in the first cross-examination. By the end of that cross-ex, you should know what military presence withdrawal entails, when it's going to happen, and what ground you have and don't have. This will make the better round for you, your opponents, and the judge. The third tip that I have for you is that impact calculus is going to be your best friend. Tell the judge what specific numbers you have on your side and why they outweigh your opponent's. Thanks for watching this video. We're going to start creating videos addressing the fundamentals of debate. That means research, block writing, how to debate the framework, and others. If you have any special requests, there's also a comment section below. Feel free to leave your notes. Make sure you're getting the updates for these new videos by clicking on the subscribe button right here, and let your coaches know that they can support us by purchasing the evidence from our Debate Clash marketplace. Thank you so much for all the support. We feel the love, and good luck at the tournaments that are coming up.